you went to public school or have a child in public school? So clearly we're invested in this issue. We have a couple of points to make. One is that there are many candidates and incumbents this year. There are 3 seats that are up for election. But this is the only race that has 3 candidates. And if you're counting, there's a problem. J.T. Sawyer is also running, but he's a commercial fisherman, and he's in Alaska. And there was no way we could snag him before the ballots dropped. So we've asked him a couple of questions, and those questions will be read to represent him tonight. Other than that, let me check my notes. There are some side seats here if anybody would like to sit along the sides. If you look around this room, we represent an aging population. And last night somebody said, oh, I'm not going to come because I haven't been in school for so long, it's not important. But obviously, you do believe it's important, and it is because it is our responsibility to nurture the next generation. So I want to thank you for coming. I know both of these gentlemen, and I respect both of them. Not only because they're good men, but because they're willing to serve their community. And as moderator, I will not tolerate any incivility. And I know that that doesn't seem like it's going to happen here. But I do want to say they deserve your respect for stepping forward for a position that is not always easy. To get started, we do have a timer. And Dana, there she is with her paddle in the back.
Can you guys see me from here?
I can see your paddle.
So our role is not to cut you off. We want this to be respectful. But I also want it to be fair. So if one person needs a little more time to answer something, I just want to be able to give your colleague equal time. So Dana's going to raise the paddle partway when you have 15 more seconds. Try to finish up. And if you need more time, when she raises her paddle all the way to say that your time is up, you may take it, unless you take over, and I don't like that one. With that said, the first two questions, all of the candidates had beforehand. What we asked of them is to introduce themselves and tell us why they are running. So Mike, if you're willing, we'll start off with you. You have 4 minutes to tell us about yourself and why you were running. Thank you.
Well, nothing like going first. My name is Mike Liu. For those of you who don't know me, I was a district ranger here for 9 years, worked with the Forest Service for 36, so career Forest Service employee, and retired a few years back. So that's who I am. During that time, I gained a lot of experience working in collaboration, partnerships, and then also a lot of strategic kind of thinking in terms of planning for large wildfires and other events within the community, and feel like that's also prepared me for whatever the school board has to, surprise me with. Why I am running, I have to admit that it's not totally my idea. I've had several individuals over the course of the last few years encourage me to run for school board, feeling that they wanted someone like myself to represent them on the board. And it wasn't until this year that I finally said, there's enough people asking me, and it's it's an important enough position within the community that it wants.
Yeah.
Can you, oh, I'm sorry.
Can you actually stand up?
Maybe you could stand up.
Yeah, Chase. Sorry about that. I'll put on my talking to the people about wildfire voice. So I was just sharing how it wasn't my initial choice to run for school board membership, that it was actually parents and others that came to me asking if I would consider running. That really got me going, or thinking about running for school board. And that really, I see it in part as being my retirement insurance. As Ann pointed out, we're all getting older, and our future is in our children and what they learn, how they're educated, the academics that they learn, and in traveling abroad in China and India and other places, they put a lot of value on their students, on their education, and on the future of the country, and we should do no less as a country and as a community. And so that really has also motivated me to really take the school board position much more seriously in terms of the request by people. And then once they had asked me, I did some research, because just because folks want you to run for school board doesn't necessarily mean it's something I need to run for. But if you look at academics, just strictly speaking, math, reading, since 2010, our test scores in terms of absolute numbers have been declining. It's not a steep drop, but it's a gradual trend. And that's part of the strategic thinking. You don't really look at the curve, you look at what are the numbers actually saying about our education and academics. And we're below where we used to be. That's a problem. We don't even meet the state average or expectations for math. When you go over to the dam here, they'll tell you right there that they're not getting enough engineers from America to run important infrastructure that they're having to go to India or China for engineers. We all know that STEM is a field or area that we're starting to decline in. How do we reverse that? So those are some of the reasons why I'm running for school board and how I got kind of encouraged along in this. I also have to thank Frank after reading through the state constitution and some of the laws and everything else a school board member should know. It's a daunting task and a lot of information. And Frank has been there for, I know, a lot of years. And so he's already had to go through all that information and education and has really done well. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking you all for coming, and especially Don, Christy, and Ann for organizing this. It's a great turnout. And a little bit about myself. Before I get going, I usually like to speak extemporaneously, but I decided tonight, since I can't spell it, that I wasn't going to do that. And seriously, I have a lot of information that I want to get out there in a limited amount of time, so I'm probably going to read it. So forgive the lack of eye contact, and here we go. So I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania in a small college town. The father of my closest friend served on the school board, coincidentally. I left home at 17 after receiving a competitive appointment to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. Graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Nautical Sciences and a commission in the Coast Guard. Spent the next 5 years in the fleet as a commissioned line officer before resigning while I was stationed in Seattle and started my lifetime career in real estate. After living in Seattle for 20 years, I moved to Mazama in 1994, where I still live on a small horse farm. I believe in public service, and I believe in public education as fundamental to keeping our freedom. Those beliefs and the example of numerous mentors growing up, including my friend's dad, Sam Evans, are why 20 years ago I ran for the school board then, and why I'm here asking for your vote again now. Having served as a member of this board for nearly 20 years, coupled with my educational background, military service, and work-related experience, I possess firsthand knowledge, proven collaboration skills, and personal qualities that positively contribute to a high-functioning school district, which is what we are. Our board policies, open-mindedness, and focus on fulfilling the needs of each individual student have attracted the forward-thinking administrators, dedicated professional educators, and broad-based community support. When considering policies or other proposals, we ask ourselves, how will our actions enhance student learning? Do we have the financial capacity? Is it sustainable? What is the impact on our students, staff, parents, taxpayers, and community? One of our most important duties is to oversee the budget development process. Clean financial audits, significant growth in student enrollment, expansion of educational programs and extracurricular activities, all at little or no cost to families, and the successful passage of numerous levy and bond approvals all serve as clear evidence we invest in what we value, our students. During my tenure, our school district has cultivated strong and trusting relationships, strategically invested our limited resources in support of every student, promoted high levels of family and community engagement, and delivered positive results as displayed by our students who graduate prepared to pursue the widest range of career, education, and civic opportunities possible. Serving as one of your school board directors for the past 2 decades has been a privilege for which I thank you. We've come a long way, but there's still more to be done. With your support, I'm willing and qualified to stay with it. Thank you.
And J.T. Sawyer, the words of, read by Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy. I spoke with JT before. I'm going to give the back a little break here so they can hear. I spoke with JT the night before he left to go to fish in Bristol Bay and asked him, we had a couple questions. He's not going to be able to answer your questions here tonight, but he can answer these first 2, and he sent these to me, so here we go. My name is JT Sawyer. I am happily married to Lisa Sawyer and live in Winthrop, where we raise our 3 children, Luke, Caleb, and Ruth. We have made the Methow Valley our home since 2007 when I began smoke jumping at NCSB. My wife works as a physical therapist. I'm running for school director because I love and care for this community and its families and their kids. I've been a direct beneficiary of the public school system in Shelton, Washington, where I graduated with a diploma and college credits in fire science. The school system had a profound impact on my life in cooperation with my family. It helped guide me using my strengths into a career that has shaped who I am today. My desire to give back and see the school succeed in this for every child and young adult who goes through the system.
And we're going to take a short detour here. Many of the candidates and school board members are here tonight. This particular race is the only race that has 3 candidates, so it alone is going to be on your primary ballot. Other races that have 2 people, they cruise to the general. So I would like for all current school board members and candidates to stand up. Thank you. And if you would, if you would just introduce yourself so people know who you are.
I'm Dana Stromberger. I'm currently chair of the board, and I've been serving for the last 12 years.
Thank you.
Judy Hartmeyer Wright, and I've been serving for 2 terms, so I'm up for election this year.
I'm Scott Larson. I've never served on the school board, but I've got kids that came here to Libertyville and graduated, and I have 2 grandkids in the school district.
I'm Jennifer Bashevsky. I'm running for the Carlton position, although everybody gets to vote for that position. Scott and I are running for that position together.
And I'm Austin Lott. I'm running with Judith for the first position. I have kids in the school district.
Thank you all for serving. So the second question that our candidates received was, what specific issues would you prioritize if you win this election? 2 minutes. And actually, let's switch. Frank, do you mind going first?
No, not at all. This will be somewhat of a fire hose delivery. Someone once said, where there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. With this in mind, I believe the 2 most pressing issues facing our school district, similar to many districts across the country, include addressing the unmet need and growing skills gap faced by employers and expanding partnerships with families, educational partners, employers, and community-based mentors. In doing so, we provide every student with an opportunity to engage in rigorous college and the high school coursework and at the same time rub elbows with the real world through participation in industry-standard career and technical education, community-based internships, and more recently, paid apprenticeships. Serving as one of 26 school districts statewide that was recently selected to participate in the high school to post-secondary project, we plan to collect data used to determine how well we're doing in our efforts to develop graduates ready to pursue gainful employment in high demand and livable wage-earning jobs that contribute to the health and wellness of their community while ensuring every student has access to limitless pathways, related coursework, and post-secondary counseling service at no cost to students and families. While we've made significant progress, there's work to be done. As one of 5 publicly elected officials, mindful of those I represent and those we serve, I work closely with the 4 other directors, the superintendent and staff to set goals, identify the resources and supports needed to achieve the goals, and a plan to monitor our progress toward the goals over time. Consistent with our past success, I believe our future success is dependent upon the 5 elements that serve as the foundation of successful teams. This includes a foundation of trust, a willingness to embrace conflict, a strong commitment to the vision set forth, a relentless belief in our ability to be better, and a laser-like focus on results, one student at a time. Thank you.
I'll stand again so you can hear me in the back. So the League of Women Voters asked a similar question, and I'll just share what I shared with the League of Women Voters. One of the issues that I would like to address, and let me just say too that I was hoping to actually hear back from some of you tonight, but one of the advantages I feel I bring is a pair of fresh eyes to the school board, someone who can kind of look in and see what's been going on and try to bring maybe a different perspective, a different view. But based on what I've seen, based on some of the figures, one of the issues that I would have and would be looking at is just the academic excellence within the school. I shared some numbers earlier, but I'd really like to spend some time understanding why our academics are scoring where they are, how to improve that, and how to really bolster really the academics within the school. The next one would be parental partnerships and access. I know there's the new Family Teachers Association that's been formed, formerly PTA, and I'd like to just, I think that was also mentioned earlier, I'd like to see that really expand and grow. I think there's a lot of value to parental participation in the education of their own kids, and looking for ways to really connect parents with their student and their learning is another issue and priority that I would be looking at as a school board member. And probably the third I would be looking at and trying to address a lot of the concerns that I've heard from parents regarding bullying, behavioral issues that kids acting out in classrooms that are taking away from that academic environment within the classroom, and then also some of the prevalent drug use within the community and at school. So those are some things that I would certainly be looking at and consider as important issues. When I look at the budget, the school budget's increased 17%. Oh, I'm out of time, sorry.
JT Sawyer.
Okay, first I would prioritize sound judgment in managing the budget to get the most out of the money available to the schools. Secondly, I would focus on creating an academic learning environment for all students, including a quiet, respectful library space. Thirdly, I would love to explore ways to engage with parents and or guardians so they can be more directly involved in their children's education and school life. I'm willing to talk to anybody in more detail about these and other issues directly via phone or in person. Please feel free to give me a call. You ready? 360-701-3580. I work in Alaska with variable cell service in June and July. During that time, call 907-843-2569. Thanks for your time and consideration.
And with that in mind, ballots are supposed to be mailed on the 14th, tomorrow, which is why we're doing this today, and the election is August 1st.
You mean the ballots are going to be mailed to us?
To us.
Oh.
To us, and the election is August 1st.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I'm not sure what I said, but there was a look of panic in the audience. And along these lines, more questions are welcome. I have a few here that I'm going to ask that have been garnered from the audience. But if something comes up while we're talking and you wish to write down a question, Dawn and Christy will be taking cards throughout. So here we go. This is to both of you. And you'll have a minute apiece.
Hold on one second.
Go ahead, Dawn.
I want to get some people for the bench here.
Oh, yes, please come on in.
He's punishing us.
You are blessed. So, to both candidates, are you concerned that any books in the school library might be inappropriate? Mike, you get to start on this one.
Yes, I am concerned if there are inappropriate books in the library. But in terms of who determines appropriateness in terms of what's in our libraries, I think that's probably more what they're asking, maybe.
I can read the question again,
Okay.
but I can't interpret it for you. Are you concerned that any books in the school libraries might be inappropriate?
So yes, I am concerned. And I would, again, I mentioned earlier my desire to engage parents more. I think a key in looking at or reviewing books in the library would be also to engage really the parents of the students also in reviewing and looking at and determining what's age appropriate for our students.
Frank?
By way of answering that, I have complete trust in the professionals, our professional educators. And we're a governing board, we're not a managing board. We establish policy and set rules and regulations, if you will. And then the professional educators who are trained, and most of ours have a lot of experience, those type of decisions I trust are being made by the people who are tasked to make such decisions. And there's a fine line about that in free speech issues. Our school district, I believe, is strong enough in its educational effort that if there is something that is debatable, it needs to be debated, and to trust our children and students to be learning that skill in a safe environment, which is a school setting, with proper supervision. So the simple answer, of course, I would be concerned if something might be. That's an unusually worded question. It's almost a hypothetical. I don't believe, so I'm done, thank you.
So Frank, you get this one first, but it's for both of you. What are your thoughts about the, quote, hardening of schools as a means of preventing school shootings?
Pardon me. I think that's unfortunate, and I think there's better ways to do it than, I guess you'd have to define hardening. I hate politics and I'm sounding like that, but I don't know what, of course, because part of the beauty of our school system and our schools is there's a lot of time spent outdoors. So I think you can take reasonable precautions and analyze the risk and be prepared. And our school district goes through drills that establish what might happen. And we put in locking, automatic locking doors, and taken the basic security without really impacting the way the students get to experience the outdoors, which is a prime part of the attraction of our schools. I think that addressed the question.
Mike?
So hardening of schools, I'd say that's a safety and access question there. And in my career in the Forest Service, we were always faced with concerns over employee or public safety versus access to either the national forest or employees. And I think that's a careful balance that you have to strike, because if you restrict it too much in terms of access, then you've really lost a lot of the freedom that I think is important for us. And I think when we talk about the school board setting policy and looking at those things, I think as a school board, we would need to really discuss what makes sense for a rural community like ours and have the proper amount of hardening, if you will, the safety measures as appropriate for a school of our size and risk. So hopefully that answers your question.
I'm assuming you can hear my questions. Am I speaking too quietly? Good, all right. That's generally not the problem. Being that Methow Valley School District is a public school funded with public money, created and mandated to serve all students, what policies will you work to strengthen to ensure that all children feel welcome and safe in our schools? Mike.
Wow. So when I think about that, if you're a student in the public schools, you're already benefiting there. And so I'm extrapolating and thinking that maybe the writer is also talking about homeschool and some of the other alternatives to public school. And certainly access to library resources, access to sports and other activities within the school if you happen to be a homeschooler, or if you're teaching or your student is not in public school. I think those are important aspects to allow everyone, all the students, to have that same level of access to academics and sports, and I think that's my answer.
I personally can't do anything, but by serving on the board, my decisions are based on what's best for each student. Trying to break down labeling, trying to break down any kind of division. We have 4 separate schools. We've got the elementary school, the Liberty Bell, we've got the homeschool, and we have the missing one. One of the more important ones, the ILC. And we're working toward equal opportunity, if you will, for each student, so that they all have whatever they need for whatever they need, they can get. We're working toward the model that the ILC has right now, which is individualized learning plans. There's absolutely no reason that each student in our school district couldn't have an individualized learning plan and follow it. And I'm a big advocate of that, and that's how I would address that problem, probably indirectly.
Thank you. Frank, you get to start this one. Do you believe in separation of church and state per our Constitution? How will your policies and participation on the school board adhere to this principle?
We take an oath to abide by the Constitution of the state and by the U.S. Constitution. Period. And we do. There were many school districts during the pandemic that chose to ignore their oath and get political and spend resources that could have gone to their students on political matters that broke their oaths. And those districts are now suffering some consequences because of that. Our school district is humming along really well right now, a balanced budget and no funding difficulties. And it's because, it's not because, but in large part, we abide by the Constitution. And I'll use the rest of my time just for a quickie. If you want a quick point, if you want there's a website called vote411.org. Okay, that's from the League of Women Voters. And if you go on there and put your address, it will pull up the election and it will have the candidates' profiles and comparisons. And it's a really good resource, especially for the primary. The county, I'll wait for the next one.
Public service announcement. Go ahead, Mike.
Could you reread the question?
I can. I'm sorry, I might put it aside though, so let me get it to you exactly. Oh dear. Mike.
Separation of church and state as defined in the Constitution?
Yes. Do you believe in separation of church and state per our Constitution? How will your policies and participation on the school board adhere to this principle?
So I might need to go back to history class, but I don't know that the separation of church and state is actually in the founding constitutional documents or the Bill of Rights. I think, if I remember correctly, it was an issue that came up later, so that's why it threw me a little bit. But I think the main question is how church and state should operate in terms of our children's education and academics. Clearly, there are a lot of Catholic schools and other school systems that do adhere to their religious teachings as well as the academics. Public school system is different, certainly, and I would like to think that as a school board member and certainly one that would be looking at policy, would be looking at what's best for all of the kids in the school. This is really a nonpartisan position, and our primary focus are the kids.
And this one is a little bit of a follow-up question, and I'm going to give it to both of you, though, Mike, I'm afraid this is perhaps more in your bailiwick. I heard that both the challengers in this race and the challenger in the position 1 race go to the same church. Is that accurate? And if so, who or what inspired you to run at the same time? Is there any agenda that voters should know about?
Can I go first on that one? Because it's simple. My answer.
Go ahead.
More power to them for running.
Excellent.
I don't think we should question anybody's motives, at least until they prove otherwise.
And I'll just say that I do not attend the same church as any other candidate.
There you go.
And Mike should never have to see that. It's nobody's business. But thanks, Mike. And, okay, there's got to be a little gap here. The Okanagan County Auditor's web page. On the home page, there's an icon that says voters pamphlet. So that's the electronic version of the voters pamphlet that will come out in the fall. But it also has, candidate statements and gives you good information to make your choices based on.
You say that again, Okanagan what?
The Okanagan County Auditor's webpage, or homepage.
Thank you.
And I spent some time trying to find it because I went right by it. I mean, it's an icon with a picture on it, and it's almost too obvious.
Second PSA. What is the function of the school board in curriculum oversight? Mike, you get to start.
Function of the school board. As I understand it, again, like Frank points out, we as a board would be setting policy, and so from a curriculum oversight standpoint, I would imagine that as a board we would be setting the policies by which the curriculum would be evaluated on. But if elected, that's something that I would certainly be learning more about.
Good answer. We are a governing board, and we are responsible for oversight, but not curriculum development, which is really up to the professional educators and administrators. And we're in constant communication with them through the year, but it is up to them to ensure that that's the case. I was hurrying to make another service announcement, but I don't have another one.
You'll think of one. What do you think of cell phones in class? Frank?
I think it's up to the teacher. If the teacher who is the professional feels that it might be used to the advantage of the student and sets up the appropriate use of the instrument, I think the more we take advantage of learning opportunities, the better. And trusting our professional educators.
I think it's a bad idea. I think it would be the exception rather than the rule. and that when the students in the classroom, their attention should be on the subject that they're learning, not disrupted or interrupted by phone texts or other things.
This one is again directed to Mike. And can you share a little about your choice to homeschool your own children? What were the factors that weighed in on that decision? And with that, I think Frank should be able to answer, because Frank, you have children also, so you could answer in terms of the decisions of how you chose to school your children. Okay?
Sure.
Mike?
Sure. So, I'll stand up. I have 4 kids, and they all were mostly homeschooled. And as a Forest Service employee, I moved around quite a bit in my career, similar to Army brats or other folks who get stationed in various locations. And so they never had the opportunity to be in one place for very long. And homeschooling just fit very well with that, in that we were able then to have a continual, uninterrupted, if you will, educational program for our kids. My kids also, in one location that I was assigned, did attend a private school for a little while, and then we also had our youngest daughter in public school for a semester. And that, quite honestly, was really too slow for her, and she had requested to come back and finish out in homeschooling. So that's kind of our personal choice, and given my work and how we moved around, that seemed like the best option to give our kids the best education that we thought we could provide. So hopefully that answers it.
Interestingly enough, our REACH program, which is the homeschooling program, ends at the 8th grade. And in the name of parental choice, we want to increase, we're now considering, on the basis of requests from some of the parents, if that couldn't be extended through 12th grade on an optional basis. But just to reach, if a parent feels strongly that their child is getting what they need and more through the REACH program, then there, in my opinion, that should be able to go all the way through their career in high school. And the REACH program, it's not, the REACH program is supervised. There's a certificated teacher that checks in with the parents and helps them with any questions. There's a small stipend for supplies and equipment. And the students from a funding standpoint, the students in the REACH program, it's a misnomer that the state reimburses about 80% of what a normal FTE is. Because in fairness, there's less of the resources of the school being used, except that they would be treated equally as far as choice.
Actually the question was a little bit more, you chose to answer about homeschooling, but the question was, why did you choose to educate your children in a certain way?
Sure.
So you've used your time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer, just because that was the question.
It won't take that long. In my opening statement, I said that I believe in public education as the foundation of our freedom. That's why the kids that I was a step parent to went to public schools.
Thank you. If you could only make one change to benefit Methow Valley School District during your term, what would it be? What would be your priority? Mike? Actually, you answered the last one first. I apologize. Frank?
Continue to provide choices to parents and students. From preschool to graduation, and now we're involved in the study measuring the postgraduate success rate and in the job market and in schools. So it would be to increase the opportunities. And I'll just segue back a little bit to the cell phone. If a student is motivated by something that is only accessible by the phone and is under proper supervision, I don't think we should shield our students from life. Because there are rights and obligations as a citizen, and it can be related to the student in that way. and turn it into a teachable moment and not be fighting the trend.
Is it still there? There?
Okay, so I feel a little bit like Aladdin in the lamp there, only instead of 3 wishes I get 1. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know what one thing I would choose until I elected and I get a chance to see really what the pressing issues are. It would be hard for me to really answer what that one wish would be. So anyway, sorry to punt on that, but I would say I don't know at this point.
And we have a little time, so I'll do a follow-up on it. Is there something that intrigues you that you would like to work on? It doesn't have to be your absolute priority, but is there something that engages you now that you'd like to do?
There's a lot that engages me that I would like to do. But one thing I do want to delve more into is just the school and parental relationship and teachers and how to really make that much more solid and transparent for everybody. So that's one area that I'd like to spend more time looking at.
And thank you for letting me push a little harder. These are kind of opposites of each other. Let me read through this one. And I'm sorry, there's one that I can't read, but it's on a completely different topic, so I'm going to try to start it. And if the person who wrote it wants to correct me, they can. But there's a key word here. If parents take their kids out of sex ed classes, does it not make sense to make sure the parents have access, that's it, it's parents have access to the materials in the curriculum so they can instruct their children? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it's your turn this time, Mike.
Okay. A lot of ifs.
Yes.
So
basically asking if parents should have the same access to the school materials so that they can take the information home and teach their kids instead of having sex ed taught in the school.
So in case you haven't figured it out, I am a big fan of parents having a lot of say in their own children's education in terms of being able to access the curriculum, in this case sex ed, so they can either teach it or teach what they feel is important from it at home. I don't see why not. When I was Mr. Ranger, I tried to run as transparent a Ranger district as I could. I think the schools should also operate in the same way with parents. If there isn't transparency, then there isn't the trust there. And I think for parents and schools to partner and work together, there has to be that trust. And you build that through transparency. And so having that curriculum available, I think, is really important.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree that, and I think every effort is made to accommodate that. But in general, if it wasn't, it should be, because it's a parent's responsibility, and the school is just in a lot of ways complying with state law, and it's up having a parent involved with what's being taught in any curriculum is necessary. And I'm not even sure I guess because it's a question, don't have to infer that there's a problem with it, because I think there is access. And I know there's choice. Each lesson is, as I understand it, communicated to the parents and given the option to opt out, opt in, and also it provides information to the parents how to supplement the class. So if you're given instructions how to supplement the class, it goes to the reason that you would be aware of what the class is. So when the child comes home, if they're enrolled in the class, there are aids for the parent to give consistent responses, if they feel they're consistent, based on the curriculum.
What do you see as the board's responsibilities for supporting students and families with limited resources?
Same as if they had unlimited. And that's what we've been, since I've been on the school board, that's been one of my mantras for the past 20 years, is that we need to do away with any kind of fees or extra costs that eliminate somebody from participating in any of our activities. But in putting yourself in a place of the family that may not have high economic income, there's a matter of pride sometimes that the differentiation then causes resistance. So there should be no differentiation based on, it shouldn't even be an issue. Even the labeling of people that are free and reduced lunch, that's an anathema to me. We don't need to judge people and label them by their needs, by their desires, by whatever. We're all individuals, and we try to teach. Our system promotes treating each student as an individual. I beat you on the battle.
Mike?
So, if I understand the question correctly, I think it would be fair to say that parents or families in the valley have different sources of income or access to a variety of things, but when it comes to education and public education in particular, I think that access and availability should be across the board equal for everyone. So if there is some policy or issue that the school board can work on to make that more fair and equitable, I think that would be our role as a school board, to try to make it so that any student who wants to learn, who wants to get that education can, and is not disadvantaged by whatever station in life they're in.
Thank you. Do you agree that the theory of evolution is accepted science? Should it be taught in the public school?
I think they call it a theory for a reason. I think there are a lot of theories on the origin of life, and I think as educators, we shouldn't be looking to indoctrinate our students. We should be creating free-thinking students and not be fearful of having different ideas or viewpoints out there. So yes, we should teach evolution in school. I think we should teach a lot of origin theories out there so that students can have that exposure and that understanding.
Frank?
I don't know why we would, unless there's a law against it. It makes sense to me because we're teaching people to be individuals, or we're trying to teach students and treat them as individuals with different opinions. And because an opinion is different, I think it goes without saying that they should discuss that and debate that in their classes as far as the evolution versus the theory of evolution. But that's true with a lot of things. And a lot of the things we have to address are coming from the state level, and that's where they need to be corrected. Again, we take rules, we take our directions from the legislature and the governor based on our oath, and we can't afford to spend any of our time or the taxpayers' money fighting political battles. We're there to teach and to provide an education for the kids. So.
Well, as a follow-up question, are there any classes in the current Methow Valley School District curriculum that you would like to eliminate or significantly modify?
Me?
Frank? Yeah.
No.
So I'm not familiar enough with all the curriculum classes to say one way or the other. There are certain things I would like to add. One would certainly be in the area of American history and civics. There just seems to me, when I talk to the younger generation, a lack of understanding of a lot of our history, a lot of the civic-minded things that were taught when I went to school, in public school. And that's borne out through, I was just reading an article on recruitment or enlistments in the armed forces and how that's really declined, and the Department of Defense had said, you know, part of that issue is kids are being taught in school, you know, their history and how this country came to being and the freedoms that we enjoy. So that would be something I'd add, if, or at least emphasize. But I'd have to get it on the school board and look at the curriculum and answer that more fully.
So this one's a little bit longer, and as a physician, I have an opinion, but I am your moderator, and so I am going to read the question. Stay with me. I am new to the Valley. My family and I just moved from Olympia last week. We have 2 children, ages 11 and 13, and welcome wherever you are. We are wondering where we should enroll our children. We are weighing our options between public, private, or homeschool. My question concerns Senate Bill 5599, which allows gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers, to be given to children ages 13 to 18 without parental knowledge. Are you in favor of this position within our school district? And does the school board have the power to amend this policy and ensure parents are informed about all aspects of their children's education and social behaviors? Sorry, Mike, you're first. And no, I won't read it again, but I'll highlight any part of it.
Well, that's a great question, honestly. And let me think about how I want to answer that. So I was just in India, where in a Muslim slum where they had betrothed and were marrying off 16-year-old women to a much older Muslim man in a distant community. And my friend and I were able to persuade the family to wait until those kids were at least 18 before they married them off. And the girls themselves were 16, they really didn't have a clue what they were getting into. And when you consider the age that we allow people to drink, to vote, there's a reason why children are going to school to learn and to develop in their academics. And when we talk about issues related around gender dysphoria, I think that's a very important family decision. And I would, one, say that as a law, you know, the school board can't go against state law, but we can certainly develop policies that might encourage those kids to have those conversations with their parents, because I think when dealing with gender dysphoria, that's a really important thing for families to talk about and to work through. And that when you have young kids with all those hormones and other things going on, you need the parent there in discussions. Sorry for going over time.
And how much, can you allow Frank an equal amount of time? Thank you.
That's a horrendous hypothetical. I mean, it really is. And to even answer it is loaded, because you're dealing with people's rights, no matter what their age. You're dealing with their rights. And of course, there's a point where a parent should have the responsibility. They do have the responsibility, and they should be able to help with the choice. And personally, aside from the school, because that may be something that's going to come up for debate over time, I don't know. But it is a matter of respecting somebody's rights. But I guess the key is in establishing if they have the capacity to make that choice. I personally don't really understand the whole concept of it, and it's something that if it did come up, and it's likely to, I don't know about whether choosing what school to go to is the differentiating factor. It's what the district decides is appropriate. with parental and community input. All of our decisions are with that parameter, that especially when it affects families. We want to make sure that the families are involved with any decision we make. So I personally find it really interesting, though, how a person that is of a very young age can be declared independent. But it's if it's the law, it's the law until the law is changed. Again, I think it's an issue that goes way above the local school board in creating policy. It would have to come from the state. And again, so the state legislature is the place to fight that battle, not the schools.
This person wrote 3 questions, and so I'm going to select one. The news has highlighted the challenges for today's school boards. Do you support an inclusive curriculum that teaches respect for diversity in our community? Frank.
How could you not, actually? But you have to be careful about the national news too, because they're painting school districts with a broad brush, and especially certain networks. I happen to watch a couple of different networks with different political views, and the fact that what they're claiming the school boards have a right to do, they don't. They don't have the authority to do it. So I guess you have to base it on your own school. I'm struggling. Could you give me that question again?
It was the 3-parter. It says, do you support an inclusive curriculum that teaches respect for diversity in our community?
Yeah, of course. I made that question more complicated. I guess it hit a hot button with me with the news on how the school districts are being run by unions. And our school district has a wonderful working relationship with the union, and the primary goal is what's best for the student. So the unions, it is possible for the unions and the school district to work together and benefit both. So I'm sorry for that little lapse and going in the wrong direction, but it's a pet peeve I have.
So I'll make this one really quick. As a policy, if I were on the school board, I would certainly look to set a policy of just respect, period. I think whether it's diversity, whether it's gender, whatever it is, I think as a school, we just need to focus on the term respect, and that covers everything. So I would definitely be very supportive of policies that encouraged and promoted respect for one another.
This one's a long one, so hang with me. Considering what is happening in some school districts across the country, such as book banning curriculums, battles, parents disrupting school board meetings, what is our current climate in the Methow Valley? And what do each of you see as your leadership role in keeping our district progressive and responsive? Say again?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Thank you. So Mike, you first.
Okay. So I've only attended one school board meeting, and that was kind of boring, and there wasn't a lot of drama there. So I would, based on my one experience, say that the climate is probably fairly respectful, and we haven't gotten into some of those big issues perhaps. But again, I think as those creep into our community and society, I think they're worth addressing. I think we need to have respectful dialogue on that, and it should include the community, the parents, and the school, and together come up with policies that make sense and that are attainable.
If I remember the question correctly, the best way to teach respect is to model respect. And the modeling starts at the top, if you will, and the school board is very respectful of each other their ideas, and they're respectful of anybody that comes before the school board. And that respect is noticed by the teachers, it's noticed by the students, it's noticed by the parents. It's not right in your face, but it's leadership by example. And if you treat people with respect, you get respect back. So that's how this district is handling the respect issue, which is not really a big issue. As far as quiet board meetings, that's been a goal for a long time. Because we try to be open or proactive in meeting people's concerns, so that it doesn't reach a boiling point and then they explode. It hasn't always been that way in my 20 years on the board. I've lived through some really explosive times that could have been avoided if there had been mutual respect.
So I'm going to read one last question. I'm pretty much running out. A lot of these are duplicates. And then you'll each have a chance to make some closing remarks. So just preparing you that you'll have that time, okay? What role, if any, does religion have in school curriculum? Frank, you get to start.
Well, I guess if it depends on the context of religion. If you're talking about preferential treatment or different treatment because of a religion, then I don't think it has any place in the schools. And you can't fault somebody for their belief, and you can't penalize them for their belief, which is why the school district, I think, tries to stay neutral and just do the job that we're assigned to do, and that is provide basic education and more to the students in our valley. And I think if you talk to a lot of the recent graduates, it would be instructive to see how well that's happening. There's always extremes in any kind of situation, but I think it's been, goes back to respect again.
So I think context is everything. Certainly learning about the various religions in the world, I think, is an important thing for students to know and be prepared for. So do I think religion should be excluded in the school? No. Again, do I think certain religions should have preference or other things? No, to that as well. The school is an academic environment that we're trying to have our students be able to learn and prepare them for life in general. And to the degree that we can share that marketplace of ideas and educate them and allow them to learn and make their own choices and decisions, I think that's great. Again, I don't believe that the school is there to indoctrinate anybody on one belief or one set of principles. We should be just focusing on the academics, on how to make that student achieve the best that they can, both in school and in their life.
So again, I'm going to say thank you all for coming. We're going to have some closing remarks. We have really no time for more questions. I was going to take a couple questions from the audience, but we've come to the end of the hour.
Darn.
We're going to be, but we'll be here for probably a little bit of time afterwards. I think you would like to perhaps stay for a little bit afterwards to chat with people. Is that possible?
Sure.
Both of you? Okay.
Especially if there's some watermelon.
There's watermelon and water. So here we go. You started with the beginning introductory statement, so I will have you, Frank, with your closing remarks.
How long do you want? Two.
I want to relate an interesting story about the ILC, and this kind of sums it up, I think. But as part of the introduction of the student into the ILC, a question is asked, and that is, what would you like to learn? And one of the students came before the board and said that was the first time in his life that anybody asked him what he wanted. That's what our school district is trying to accomplish for every student, that they can realize, they can understand what they're good at, what they're inclined to do, what their passion might be, and encourage it. So that's that's my personal philosophy too. I have trouble relating it to me because the board is consisted of 5 people. everybody's opinion counts, and I have trouble sometimes differentiating what's my opinion and what we've debated, and which we then accept. Once we've debated a policy, then we all support that policy. You're up, Mike.
Okay. Again, thank you for coming. This is probably better turnout than some of the fire information meetings that I've been to. So it's great to have so many folks here. Hopefully you learned a little bit about each of us, and I am available just like JT and others are by phone, or if you see me at Hanks or wherever, feel free to come up, and some of you have already taken that, and that's great. As a former ranger, I know what it's like to be available 24/7, so it doesn't bother me. Feel free to approach me at the supermarket or whatever, ask your questions. Love to have those conversations with you. So thank you again, and hopefully, if elected, I can bring some new eyes to the board, and certainly respect the current board members for the time and commitment they've already given to us as a board for our community and for our students. Thanks.